This video contains endgame spoilers for the following games. Hope you enjoy the video. I will never understand why people prefer depressing endings in video games, is the title of a Reddit post made by a now deleted user. They continue on, "We are surrounded by constant death, sickness, heartache, pain, agony, and frustration. And that's why some people like me actually feel satisfaction in happy endings done right, because real life sucks and a lot of people play games to escape reality." This is a completely valid opinion to have. Just as with watching movies or TV shows, sometimes all you want is something lighthearted and fun where everything is neatly wrapped up in the end. That said, this of course doesn't apply to everyone, and there's people in the comments explaining this standpoint. One user says, "It's not that I prefer sad endings, it's that I like endings which deliver deep and impactful emotions in general. I think the difference for me is that feel-good endings have a hard time with that because I can usually see them coming from a mile away. They can be satisfying, but they don't often leave me with something to contemplate for days after." Someone else states, "I want to feel, with capital letters, the media I consume. I want to feel all-eclipsing joy. I want to feel soul-crushing sadness. I want stories that stick with me for whatever reason." Media is a safe place to feel those negative emotions. You can learn a lot about yourself by thinking a little about your emotional responses, and it is healthy to have an outlet for all the shit we have swirling inside us. Studies do seem to suggest that sad movies provide a form of perspective and catharsis. It makes you feel better about your own struggles while also providing a safe space and outlet for your emotions. It may trigger viewers to cry, which gives them a way and reason to let go of their own bottled up feelings. Myself, however, I don't tend to watch sad movies or play sad games just to make myself feel better. Most of the time, going into a game I won't even know it'll end badly, as I tend to avoid spoilers as much as possible to get maximum enjoyment out of my experience. But the reason those games stick with me after completion, or why I might replay them despite knowing what's to come, is because I enjoy the whole package, even when it didn't end with a happily ever after, and because it's what's right for the story. It's not sad purely to evoke an emotional response or wring tears out of players, but it's sad because that's simply how this journey must end. It's what all the events have led to. It's a good story, one I want to relive, even if it ends the way it does. And if it is because of the way it ends rather than in spite of it, it's either because, yes, I do want a good cry, or because the ending was well executed and impacted me in a way that, like one of the quotes from earlier said, left me with something to contemplate. S.O.M.A is probably the best game I can think of when it comes to endings that leave me contemplative. On top of that, while the ending is sad, it doesn't make me cry. Instead, it makes me think, which in this case is almost worse somehow. If you're unfamiliar with S.O.M.A, I fear a short description won't hit the correct way, and I deeply encourage you to either play it yourself, watch someone else play it, or at least watch an in-depth recap of the story. Simply put though, during the course of the game you take the role of Simon, who's essentially trapped in a facility at the bottom of the ocean. Your goal is to board, or rather transfer your consciousness, onto what's known as the Ark, to finally leave this place in favor of something better. Throughout the game, you learn that by transferring your consciousness, you're actually just creating a copy of your consciousness elsewhere. So each time you initiate a transfer, there will be another one of you, but the old you will still remain. In the end, you successfully transfer your consciousness onto the Ark, and it sets off on its journey to a better place, only for you to still be stuck on the bottom of the ocean. Instead of showing the perspective of the copied consciousness, like the game has done every instance so far, it finally shows you the perspective of the quote-unquote original, the one left behind. As your companion Catherine puts it, you lost the coin toss. This ending is unmistakably a bad one, but not in the usual way where it's related to the theme of loss and grief, like most stories. Instead, it hits you with a sense of existential dread. It's thought-provoking, it makes you ponder what constitutes a self, and it's utterly dismal. That's not to say it's better or worse than games that do deal with losing or grieving a loved one. It's simply different, and the way I enjoy these games differs too. With S.O.M.A, it's a game I don't often feel the need to revisit, as the ending packs such a hard punch that I can just rewatch that alone if I want a nice little dose of existential crisis. With other games though, I might replay them as a way to immortalize and honor the characters I've gotten to know by re-experiencing their journey. Every once in a while, I find myself missing Lee Everett's kind heart and how he took it upon himself to protect Clementine, to the point where I replay The Walking Dead Season 1 just to see them together and happy again, despite knowing they will be cruelly ripped away from each other in the end. And in the end, it still feels worth the pain, having Lee die with the knowledge that he's taught Clem what she needs to know to survive, and that there are people out there who are happy to look after her in his stead. Let's rewind just a little. If you've somehow not played this gem of a game, it follows main character Lee as he comes across a little girl named Clementine in the beginning of a zombie outbreak. Realizing her parents are gone, he decides to help her, and throughout the story we see them forge a father-daughter bond. Later in the game, Lee is bitten, and everything comes to a close with a tearful goodbye between the two. It's worth mentioning that a big reason why this game is as popular as it is because of its ending. Or at least that's one of my theories, as someone who played the episodes when they came out and has been a fan ever since. Of course, the fact that the TV show was in its prime at the time helped bring the game attention, but that's not why it still holds up to this day. It was also widely popular for its choice and consequence gameplay, something that was not very common at the time outside of studios like BioWare and Quantic Dream, but the reason it's still universally appreciated now is because of its emotional impact. When discussing games that made players cry, it's near impossible to avoid The Walking Dead as an answer. And if the game had ended on a happy note, it wouldn't have had this legacy. Honestly, when I think about games I've played with happy endings, those don't often stand out to me, and they're rarely part of my decision to replay a certain game. At least, not as often when compared to its opposites. There's no impact related to the ending that sticks with me. No thoughts about what could have been. It all wrapped up nicely, so sometimes I just don't end up feeling the need to think about it past its conclusion. With a sad or bittersweet ending, I'm often left questioning what if I had been able to do things differently? What would the characters' futures look like? How would things be different? It takes up more of my thoughts, leading it to feel more impactful. If everything is peachy in the end, and I'm satisfied with that, there's no reason for me to think about the what ifs. Sure, it would have been lovely to see Lee and Clem successfully find safety together, but if there's anything we know from zombie media, The Walking Dead specifically, it's that happy endings are near impossible. Besides, this story would have required a lot of changes to justify such an ending. Teaching Clem how to survive wouldn't really have been a necessity, as her protector would continue to keep her safe probably until adulthood, and there wouldn't be much of a point in the player teaching her how to shoot a gun and to keep her hair short if we would never see her use this knowledge. If Lee hadn't been bitten, we probably wouldn't have gotten the well-loved scene of him moving through a horde of walkers to save Clem from the man who kidnaps her in episode 4. He does this because he knows he's already doomed, and would have most likely tried harder to find a different way otherwise to ensure he'd still be alive to protect her after saving her. And even if he hadn't been affected and still decided to plow through the undead crowd, it would have emphasized what we already know, that he's willing to die for Clementine. It's fitting that in the end he does die, with the knowledge that she will be okay. It's fully in line with the character and our experience in the game so far, which is what makes it such a good ending. It's clear that this was always how Telltale planned for the story to wrap up. This is also why I have nothing against the ending of The Last of Us Part 2. Controversial, I know. Everything we experience throughout our journey leads to an outcome that never would have been happy. You'd either have to change the game all the way down to its core themes of cyclical violence, regret, grief, and subsequent revenge, or you'd have to give it an ending that clashes with the moral of the story, which I'd argue would be worse. To those unfamiliar, throughout the first game we follow the protagonist Joel, as he's supposed to safely transport a girl named Ellie to a specific location, all in a post-apocalyptic world where there's basically also a zombie outbreak caused by a virus. Zombies and sadness, am I right? During the course of the game, they too form a father-daughter bond, but when Joel finds out that Ellie will die at their destination as she's immune to the virus and they're aiming to make a cure from her at the cost of her life, he kills everyone at the facility to save her. She finds out about this in Part 2 and goes no contact with him for 2 years. One day, she finally decides that she's willing to try to forgive him and begin restoring their relationship. But the day after this decision, Joel is brutally killed by Abby, the daughter of a doctor that Joel took out in cold blood in order to save Ellie, in an act of revenge. Ellie sets out on a mission to get her own revenge by killing Abby, and throughout the game this causes deaths on both sides. In the end, she gets one more chance to kill Abby, and despite her girlfriend's ultimatum to leave if Ellie goes for it, she goes for it. She decides to spare Abby though, realizing that she has become to another kid what Joel had been to Ellie, and goes home again. She's greeted by an empty house, and now has to face the fact that her desire for revenge cost her more than she wanted to lose. I do understand why people would want an ending where Ellie kills Abby. She went through this journey with that goal in mind. She has gotten so many other people killed along the road, and players might feel those lives were taken for no reason by sparing Abby. But that is the point. When is enough enough? When your goal of taking Abby's life is complete, will you feel better about everything you've sacrificed to get here? You didn't learn your lesson, and you lost everyone you cared about on your quest for revenge. Are you prepared to lose yourself, too? While you're already too far gone, do you really find it worth it to cross the point of no return, or do you hold on to the tiny sliver of humanity you still have left and hope for redemption? Violence begets violence, and the cycle only ends when someone decides not to perpetuate it anymore. Ellie does finally make this decision, but the reason this doesn't automatically lead to a happy ending is due to her actions up to this point. They would always have consequences. Like another comment in the aforementioned Reddit thread says, "If I'm playing as a wrathful person, choosing violence at every turn and making rash decisions, why should I get a happy ending? It would be logical for a darker ending most of the time in that scenario." Ellie realized this too late, and therein lies the tragedy of this outcome. But if she broke the cycle earlier, the game would have been much shorter, and even if it would have led to a happier ending, it wouldn't have agreed with the core themes of the game. With how the game is now though, I think the way everything comes to a close is perfectly fitting. A recent game I sadly can't say the same about is Clair Obscur Expedition 33. As I think I've established, I don't have a problem with sad or bittersweet endings at all, but it's when they feel disconnected from the rest of the journey that I'm left with a tinge of disappointment. In the world of Clair Obscur, I'll refer to it as Lumière, every year people of a certain age are wiped out of existence, and this age goes down by 1 every time. In order to stop this, the Lumerians go out on expeditions to stop their extinction, and have done so for decades without succeeding. We later find out that this world is simply a painting, a work of fiction created by another character. It gets quite convoluted, and I do recommend you play the game yourself if you haven't yet, as it's an amazing piece of storytelling. But in the end, we essentially have to decide whether to save the world within the canvas, or sacrifice it entirely to help a family of painters outside of the canvas, whose lives it affects negatively. Throughout the whole story, though, we're immersed in this world, and we get to know the characters that live in it, their backgrounds, their relationships, their struggles. When we find out that Lumière is simply a painting, we don't immediately dismiss everything we've learned so far as something that doesn't matter anymore. We've seen firsthand how these characters have lives of their own, feelings and opinions and agency. They have a long history that wasn't just created out of nowhere by someone on the outside. It was lived and forged by the people who existed here for years and years. Due to this, I count myself as part of the possible minority of players who felt somewhat dissatisfied with the 2 endings. It's evident that one ending is supposed to be a bit more good-leaning, while the other is more bad-leaning. But ultimately, it comes off as if both disregard the very much alive world and its characters that we have come to know. They're either erased against their will, despite us setting out on this journey in order to fight to remain in existence, or they live but under what can be interpreted as the rule of a puppet master. Picking the option where they do survive, which was our goal since the start, you're made to feel like you messed up, as the vibes are unsettling and straight up wrong, but effectively killing everyone you've come to care about despite having fought so hard to avoid that very outcome, you're made to feel like you did the right thing. It's supposed to seem like a happier ending, with all the in-canvas characters waving goodbye as if they're fine with their fate, despite their whole lives having been about making sure Lumière would remain for those who come after. I get that the point might be that you can't pretend like fictional worlds have lives of their own, that you can't sacrifice your health to remain in a fantasy, and you gotta face the real world, no matter how tough it is, in order to move on from whatever pain you're trying to escape. And while I agree it's a good lesson to learn, in the context of this game, I frankly don't care. The reason for this is because of how it's been built up to us throughout the game. We are shown that the characters we get to know, most of them anyway, weren't randomly painted kid into existence. They were born into this world and grew up inside of it, their personalities formed by their past experiences. They have agency, they exist outside of the painter's input, and completely disregarding this in the end without a care is part of where the problem lies. Additionally, it's a story about grief and the dangers of escapism, and they aim to put the players in the same shoes. Do we let go and face our grief head on, or do we cling to happiness in a fictional world? The right answer would be the former. Only the characters that players are supposed to grieve are ones that we kill off ourselves by making this very choice. It's not only about letting go, it's about actively dooming a sentient people. Also, making players feel grief by destroying a fictional world doesn't quite work for me when we're doing it to help a family that we know is also fictional, as it exists within a game. To us players, this family is just as fake as the Lumerians. Difference being, we're actually made to care about the latter. It's natural that we want them to succeed in their goal of having a chance at life. To be clear, I don't wholly disagree with the decision of killing everyone in the canvas, and I didn't even really dislike or hate the endings, but I just don't think it was built up to nor executed in a way that felt justified or even necessary. Like someone on good old Reddit said, even if the outcome of each ending remained the same, it would feel less hollow if the plight of Lumière had been properly kept in view. It's not that nothing matters, it's that they built up the world to show that it does matter, but in the end wave it off like how you'd swat a fly trying to get at your food, creating what I think is an unfulfilling ending. What I'm trying to say is that what makes a less than happy ending good to me is not purely how it makes me feel, it's about the way we get there. Referring back to the Reddit thread from the start of the video, one user differentiated good versus bad endings as a good ending being one that makes you go, oh, of course, that was the logical conclusion of the events that led up to this point. A bad ending being, what? It doesn't entirely come out of nowhere, and isn't sad or heartbreaking just for the sake of being sad or heartbreaking. It's set up beforehand, either through events, themes, or both. It doesn't go against the characters' natures, but instead goes hand in hand with their personalities and experiences so far. In the article, Sad Movies Don't Always Make Me Cry, the cognitive and affective processes underpinning enjoyment of tragedy, a study was performed to examine the role of sadness in the process of enjoying tragedy. Basically, how feeling sad when watching a sad movie can lead to enjoyment. Results from this study demonstrate that people enjoy tragedy through two mediators: perceived reality and involvement. Sadness enhances perceived reality and increases a sense of involvement, leading viewers to enjoy the sad film. While this study used a movie, I assume games have a similar effect, as they're both fictional pieces of art where you go through a story from start to finish. So, when games succeed in making players sad, this makes the game feel more real to them, which in turn makes them more involved in the story and leads to them ultimately enjoying it. That's not to say people like this automatically assume games are real. Of course, we know that this is a fictional world set in fictional conditions, be it a zombie apocalypse or inside a painting. It simply feels real in the sense that we can empathize. As the study says, perceived reality of a sad story mainly derives from the detailed and delicate descriptions of characters and the nature of their relationships. The perceived reality, what we as players relate to and sympathize with, isn't connected to the setting itself, but the characters within and what they happen to go through in this setting. I'm sad for Lee and Clem because despite their love for each other and willingness to help one another in whatever way they can, their time together runs out unexpectedly. I'm sad for Ellie because of her inability to break the cycle of violence due to the regret she had for missing out on so much time with Joel, causing her to lose the few loved ones she had left. And I'm disappointed because of the Lumerians that I had come to care about being reduced to collateral in the bickering of a family that were playing God to come to terms with their own grief. An ending doesn't have to be happy to be good, but if it's not fully consistent with the rest of the story, it opens up to the possibility that some people might think it's bad. Thank you for watching.